Sa pagpatak ng ulan, sa pagsubok na dumaraan, may tapang kang harap, lilipad kang may pangarap. Lilipad kang may pangarap.
Kailan may di mag-iisa, susulong ka ng may kasama, may tapang kang haharap.
Lilipad kang may pangarap. Lilipad kang may pangarap. Simula na ng bukas. Ngayon na, ngayon na. Simula na ng bukas. Ngayon na, ngayon na. Simula na ng bukas. Ngayon na, ngayon na, ngayon na.
Sabay sa pagbabago,
Harapin ang bagong mundo. Simula na ng bukas. Simula na ng bukas ngayon.
Year after year, one thing has remained constant. Our goal to ensure meaningful economic development and uplift the lives of the people we serve. Every time we energize our cities, fulfill the dreams of the many, forge genuine partnerships, connect ideas, design experiences, and solve our toughest challenges. We drive change for a better world. From a small town in the Visayas to our journey to become global, we will remain at the helm. Because our business is your story of firm foundations, purposeful growth, and the future that we share. Aboitiz, 100 years of advancing business and communities.
Napansin mo ba, mas madalas ka nang magsabi ng stay safe kesa bye-bye? At aminin mo, nawili ka sa TikTok, hindi para mapasaya ang sarili, kundi para mapatawang iba. Napansin mo rin ba, na palagi na kayong kumpleto pag nagsisimba? At sino mag-aakala na ang daming maglalabas ang internet celebrities ngayon? Ilang pagkain na bang na-order mo? Kahit di ka naman gutom, uhaw ka lang makatulong. At nakailang care emojis ka nang nasend mula ng ECQ. Pansin mo, iba na bigla ang go-to playlist mo. Alam mo rin bang mas maraming naglalabas ng pera ngayon? Kahit taghirap? Alam mo kung bakit? Kasi patuloy mang magbago ang mundo, isang bagay ang mananatili.
Malalampasan din natin to.
Hindi tayo mawawalan ng pag-asa. Kaya patuloy namin pinapanatili, pinakamabilis at pinakamalawak ang inyong network. So we can all be connected by hope.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to BusinessWorld Insights. Today, we're talking about boosted towards sustainability, how ESG criteria guides leading companies. So sustainability is continuously being embraced by more and more companies nowadays as a way forward from the pandemic's impact, which involves initiatives that promote the welfare of the environment, the community, and the workforce. As businesses of various sizes strive to not merely become resilient, but also sustainable in the now normal, the business community can learn best practices from leading companies aiming to achieve ESG goals. So today we have several speakers talking about the ESG criteria in their companies. So let's get started. Our first speaker, Mr. Manuel Lozano, has been Senior Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and Chief Corporate Information Officer of Aboitiz Equity Ventures, Inc. since May 2015. He also holds numerous positions across the Aboitiz Group and is an ex officio member of several board committees. He was first Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and Corporate Information Officer of Aboitiz Power from 2014 to 2015, and was first Vice President, Chief Financial Officer of Aboitiz Power Generation from 2008 to 2013. Mr. Lozano?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you to BusinessWorld for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to participate in this panel discussion. I'm happy to share our journey and the strides that we have been making to make Aboitiz grow sustainably. Let's go to the slides. So let's begin. This is one of the most critical slides for us. At Aboitiz, we've always believed that we do well by doing good. And to clarify, by doing good, this means not just doing CSR and other similar projects, but also by managing risks and uncovering opportunities across our whole ecosystem. Because if we do this well, hopefully we become top of mind and first choice as a partner amongst our stakeholders, sorry. And we've translated this to our sustainability goal or our brand promise of advancing business and communities. Because as we grow business, our stakeholders grow with us. And we define sustainable development as inclusive growth that carefully looks into the dimensions of ESG. Our One Aboitiz Sustainability Framework is the foundation that allows us to draw a sharp focus on the three key areas where ESG dimensions are present. And we call this our triple bottom line approach of people, planet, and profit. Our sustainability framework is used to assess our current state, identify key gaps, prioritize our limited resources, set targets, and most importantly, improve performance and extend the scope of value that we create. Importantly as well is that it also helps guide how we communicate and what we are doing and what we plan to do in the future. As the organization sets its sights on the next 100 years, we have been tasked to safeguard our course by continuously building a strong organization through harmonizing between sustainability and economic prosperity that has been ingrained in the way we do things. Growing profitably can also be achieved by growing sustainability, as we have all learned, especially over the last year. As a company, we have reaped the benefits of integrating sustainability through various efforts such as cost savings, avoidance of waste, and ultimately our overall resource efficiency measures. But also today, as the market for sustainable investments gains momentum and scale in the world, we're looking at more opportunities to gain capital funding for investments that would help address the various SDGs. As an example of this, in 2016, long before ESG investing was a trend, we, together with ADB and BPI, issued the first climate bonds in Asia, as certified by the Climate Bond Initiative. This 11 billion peso local currency bond was used to rehabilitate our Iwi Macban geothermal facilities, which you see here. The pandemic has made a significant social impact on our communities. This has made us rethink our way of doing things. And we have found ourselves asking the same question of purpose. How can we make a more significant contribution to the communities we serve? Our stakeholder engagement and management processes allows us to address their concerns and needs, focusing on a safe and healthy work environment for our team members, providing reliable products and services that meet our customers' expectations, and creating a resilient organization that is prepared for disasters and is a good neighbor who helps communities address their various social needs and concerns. We also strive to make a more meaningful and tangible environmental impact, and this drives a lot of our goals. Our programs include carbon emission reduction, resource efficiency, waste management, and a pipeline of renewable energy projects that will serve us and keep us busy for the rest of the decade. Our key strategy of balancing the need for energy equity, security, and environmental sustainability drives us to aggressively expand our Cleanergy portfolio, aiming to achieve a 50-50 balance between renewable and thermal energy in our current portfolio. As you probably are aware, AP is a pioneer of renewable energy in the Philippines, and today, together with our partners, we are the country's largest owner and operator of renewable energy based on installed capacity. As a company with a large energy business, climate strategy is a very material issue. In 2020, Aboitiz was the first Philippine company to signify support for the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. As a TCFD supporter, we join over 1,700 international organizations in 77 countries, aligning with the recommendations to manage climate risks and opportunities. We view this as our statement declaring that we are taking action to build a more resilient financial system through climate-related disclosures. Part of the commitment we are making is a defined governance structure on addressing climate-related risks, defining key strategies, targets, and metrics on our climate action. And finally, improving our disclosures to provide clear and reliable information to our stakeholders. In other words, transparency across all of our activities. In this long and oftentimes challenging journey towards sustainability, we remain positive and looking at better days ahead. We will strive to make well-informed decisions by having a balanced perspective of environment and social aspects that impact the company and all our stakeholders, and ensure that our initiatives and strategies are equitable across all of our stakeholders. We aim to grow and enhance our capability to attract and capture funding through sustainable investments. We will find better ways of doing things by continuously improving and integrating ESG in our enterprise architecture and management systems, and harness the potential of data science and application of innovative approaches to provide high quality and reliable products and services. And lastly, we endeavor to ensure relevant communications, transparency through our disclosures to our stakeholders and partners for growth. Thank you, and have a great day.
Sharing with us your community-based and environment-based projects. So for our
Thank
next
you.
speaker, as Vice President for Sustainability, Marla Garin Alvarez heads the BDO Sustainability Office and drives the execution of the BDO sustainability strategies. She oversees monitoring, tracking, and reporting of the bank's environmental and social impact and governance initiatives, and produces the annual BDO Sustainability Report. She works closely with business groups to ensure the bank's alignment of its policies and practices with global standards, regulations, and laws on sustainability reporting. Ms. Alvarez?
Good morning, and thank you, Janina, and thank you to Business World for the opportunity to be part of this panel. Warm and safe greetings to all my co-panelists and everyone who's attending this panel today. So achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2050 is possible, according to recent reports. But there is a cost to the tune of $1 trillion to $2 trillion a year, or up to 1.5% of the global GDP. That's a massive amount of money. And so one question that crops up is, where do you get that funding? But if we fail to effectively address and mitigate accelerated climate change now, it would cost us so much more. It would be a cost in terms of quality of life, in terms of resources, and our very existence in the future. Now, this is where the banks come in, specifically for BDO. To achieve this most hairy and audacious target for the planet by 2050, banks play a very critical role in providing both financing and expertise towards achieving new and more sustainable economic and business models. ESG, or environmental, social, and governance, is a journey that BDO Unibank and its subsidiaries have been pursuing for some years now. As the country's largest bank in terms of resources, and with over 1,400 branches and 4,400 plus ATMs nationwide, we take full advantage of our network and influence in promoting responsible investments which facilitate financial inclusion, climate resilience, and sustained economic growth. Now, what you see on the screen now is our sustainability philosophy and framework. So, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development states that business cannot succeed in societies that fail. Now, another way of saying that is you cannot do business in a dead planet. And historically, there's always been a strong link between economic and social growth and its corresponding environmental and social degradation. As communities grow, the environment declines, and social inequalities widen the gap between the rich and the poor. We recognize that a strong foundation for inclusive economies and a sustainable future is having a robust banking system, which provides multiple ways to promote positive environmental and social impact. This is why our sustainability framework is focused on resilience and embedding ESG in everything that we do as a bank. You can see this expressed in our sustainability philosophy, where we seek to achieve strategic resilience by incorporating sustainability in the way we do business. And we aim to embed sustainability principles when making decisions, assessing relationships, and creating products. You can also see this expressed in our 5 sustainability strategies on the right. And these 5 focus on products and services that promote financial inclusion, our contribution to national economic development, our over 38,000 workforce as our very vital human capital, our disaster response initiatives which focus on what we do best, and sustainability that is firmly based on governance with integrity, accountability, and transparency at its core. Now, we use the 17 Sustainable Development Goals as our blueprint to promote sustainable finance and financial inclusion that addresses poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, prosperity, peace, and justice. In the following slides, let me tell you about 3 of our most significant environmental and social impact initiatives. There's so much more, but given the limited time, let me share these 3. Now, in this slide, BDO is a pioneer in practicing sustainable energy finance as an effective approach to harnessing clean energy. Way back in 2010, we partnered with the International Finance Corporation, a member of the World Bank, to create our Sustainable Energy Finance Program, which addresses environmental concerns. And this includes enforcing a risk-based social and environmental management system policy in lending operations and using an ENS criteria. It also includes integrating environmental risk assessment and management throughout the lifetime of projects as part of our responsible finance initiatives. And finally, it accelerated low carbon energy funding in the country. Now, in 2017, BDO offered the first green bond in the financial industry in the Philippines and in East Asia Pacific. And this provided $150 million to fund renewable energy projects while establishing the way or a risk appetite for other financial institutions to issue their own green bonds. Now, it funded 7 renewable energy projects, 2 hydro, 4 biomass, and 1 wind project. And from that initial 7, BDO now funds 50 renewable energy projects nationwide. And it generates a total of 2,184 megawatts of total installed capacity. By comparison to that 2,184, the country's total renewable energy Installed capacity as of September last year was at 5,184 megawatts. Now, BDO's contribution is equivalent to avoiding 4,170,744 tons of carbon dioxide per year, or also equivalent to the to taking out 885,381 passenger vehicles off the road in a year. So that's 2020. And as of the end of December 2020, we have funded projects worth 400.9 billion pesos. We mark 2020 as the first of several decades of our sustainable finance initiatives for BDO. So that's for environmental impact. In the next slide, let me share you our product innovation as part of our social impact. As you know, the Philippine archipelago now has 7,641 islands. And so it remains a challenge to provide accessibility to products and services in remote parts of the country. While around 43% of the population are in the Visayas and in Mindanao, more than half are in NCR and Luzon. So business mobility remains a challenge. And this is where BDO's groundbreaking product addresses this challenge. So we have Cash Agad, a mobile banking solution that's designed to serve remote areas of the country. We recognize the value that small and medium enterprises bring to the economy. So even as we encourage entrepreneurs to grow their businesses with us, we also challenged ourselves to provide services that expedite their lines for their capital needs, offer banking convenience to them and their customers, and simplify financial management and nurture long-term partnerships. So with Cash Agad, it allows debit and prepaid card holders to perform banking transactions through the use of point of sale or POS terminals deployed to BDO partner agents. These partner agents may be sari-sari stores, pawn shops, hardware stores, local grocery stores, and other similar establishments which serve as partner agents. Now, Cash Agad proved to be a true blessing to remote communities during the pandemic. Filipinos did not have to travel to larger towns or cities to be able to transact at our branches or at our ATMs. They didn't have to go out of quarantine towns to access cash necessary to buy food, medicines, and other important items. So this is one of the ways that BDO has brought significant social impact to our customers. In the next slide, let me share the BDO Foundation's biggest project to date. The BDO Foundation has several significant social impact initiatives, but among the greatest is effectively embedding financial education in the K-12 curriculum of public schools. Now, this was made possible by a partnership we have with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the Department of Education. Students, teachers, and non-teaching personnel will now learn saving, budgeting, avoiding debt or managing debt, and even investing for the future through financial education videos and discussion guides, which are now part of the DepEd's learning resources. There are 28 prepared lesson plans for math, social studies, and entrepreneurship subjects. BDO also sponsored a filmmaking competition which generated 64 3 to 5 minute student videos on financial literacy produced by the students, which teachers will use with the lesson plan. So this is a project that has not been done on such a scale nationwide and will truly provide a great social impact to future generations in terms of financial literacy. And so that's all I have to share for now. But if you want to learn more stories, more of our social and environmental impact stories, like in terms of other products that are related to ESG or actually ESG themed, and our ESG centered COVID response throughout the pandemic, I invite everyone to have a look by checking out our 2020 sustainability report available at the BDO website bdo.com.ph, corporate governance, sustainability. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insights on sustainability. We'll delve further into that during the Q&A later. So for our next speaker, Yoli Crisanto is the Corporate Communications Group Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer of Globe Telecom, a leading mobile and digital company in the Philippines. She is a multi-awarded professional, both local and international, in her fields of expertise, specifically communications, sustainability practice, and corporate social responsibility. Among her awards include the 2018 Asia's Top Sustainability Superwoman and 101 Most Impactful CSR Leaders 2019. Ms. Crisanto?
Thank you, Janina. Hi. Hello, everyone. And thank you to Business World for inviting Globe to be here in this forum. It's really nice to see that, we all belong to the same group of practitioners in sustainability. I just want to start by saying that Globe has been practicing sustainability since 2012. Um, our reports are all externally assured. And today we are doing integrated reporting because we believe that we have been quite successful in integrating our business practice with sustainability practice, right? So um, I guess in terms of our integrated report, we also do an SDG tracker. So Globe has committed to 10 of the 17 SDGs. And we do the tracker to make sure that we are constantly contributing to the SDGs. Perhaps within the context of the pandemic, let me just step back a little bit, right? And then discuss a little bit of the learnings that we've had with this COVID-19. Um, from a telco business perspective, the pandemic really brought out the importance of having internet connectivity for our country. And in various fora, we've been thanking the government for giving us the two enabling laws, which are the Bayanihan 2 and the ARTA law, that really helped address permitting issues and allowed us to really build and fast track the builds for better connectivity, right? So Globe has been building new sites since we've been building a lot of sites since before, but we've really ramped it up since the pandemic with the two enabling laws. And we've also been able to upgrade our sites, about more than 10,000 of our sites, to 4G LTE and 5G to really improve the data experience of our customers. So despite the pandemic, we've been lucky. No, our industry has been lucky because there's been minimal impact to the bottom line. I guess because of the demand for the services, right? But from an ESG perspective, the impact of COVID-19 really, highlighted S, which is social, or the social impact. There really need to be certain things that are impacting us that we need to address, like mental health, things like access to affordable education, and health services, right? So I guess from our end in Globe, we have been doing a lot of programs that really address these things, from mental health with hotline and partnerships with several non-government companies and NGOs, and even government, the DOH, the mental health institutes. And aside from that, we've done a lot of things on the area of education. So we've invested a lot in terms of being able to allow especially our public schools, more access to connectivity through our home prepaid Wi-Fi and fiber connectivity. We have programs like the Digital Thumbprint program that helped students in terms of how they're going to be dealing with online responsibility, even cyberbullying, things like that. Because as we open up a lot of our customers to access to the internet and use of the internet, there are also certain things that we needed to address, right? Like malware, like scammers, things like that. So it's a balance, right? And so what they're saying is from a sustainability standpoint, right? When we offer our products and our services, we also do programs that make sure that these products and services are also safe to use by anybody, from children to, of course, adults, right? And then I also want to touch on certain technologies and innovations that we have done. At the end of the day, because we were on lockdown and there was limited mobility, we had to act fast. We had to exercise an agile mindset in order to make sure that our customers are able to cope with what's going on around them, right? And I'm talking about technologies and innovations like Gcash, for instance, which is the number one e-wallet app at this time in the country. We're talking about access to affordable health services like Consulta MD, and Health Now. Consulta MD actually democratized health services. You know, you can get health consultation for just about 60 pesos, as opposed to when you go to the doctor, the consultation will cost you about 1,000 pesos, things like those. So we really brought down prices, and we really brought down the services down to even the lowest segments, economic segments of our society. And for us, that really is the spirit of sustainability, right? When you're doing business on an inclusive basis, when you're not leaving out anyone, right? Using technology for us to be able to solve even some of the societal problems that we have. So Consulta actually democratized health services in the same way that GCash democratized finance. So it's really finance for all. Imagine you can have a savings of about 100 pesos. It's acceptable. There's no maintaining balance requirements. We've made it really, really affordable for people to be able to engage in that kind of a service. On the environment front, I'm so very proud to say that, you know, Globe joined more than 1,500 companies globally in terms of the GSMA, which is a global association of mobile operators. We signed up to the Net Zero initiative of the GSMA, where we commit to having zero carbon emissions by 2050. So this is what we have been doing in terms of the environment. We are a practitioner of TCFD. We are signed up. We are doing now science-based targeting for us to really make sure that we hit the target of zero emissions. I guess from the slide that you're seeing now, this is really the benchmark of sustainability practice, right? When even your rating agencies, the way that, you know, our share price have been rated by finance companies, there are also these same rating agencies are also rating us in terms of our ESG practice. So we have reached our MSCI score we are rated A. From Sustainalytics, we are medium in terms of our risk. We are disclosing our carbon intensity with CDP, and we have garnered a B- rating. At the FTSE for Good, or the FTSE for Good, Globe has been a member of the index, or a part of the index, for about 5 years now. And you see on the governance side, we have garnered several accolades coming from different organizations. We were given the best corporate governance Asia for 2019 by the London Ethical Boardroom. We were hailed by the ASEAN Corporate Governance Scorecard with top 20 ASEAN publicly listed companies. We belong to the top 3 publicly listed company per country and the ASEAN asset class publicly listed company. So I guess this is the reward that we are getting by getting this kind of recognition in terms of how deep the practice is of Globe in terms of sustainability. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So it's really interesting, having sustainability not just two separate programs, but also in ensuring that your products are accessible and safe as well. So for our next speaker is Melissa Verhel de Dios. She's the Investor Relations and Corporate Sustainability Office Head of PLDT. She's been with PLDT since May 2001 and held various positions, including Property and Facilities Management Center Head. Prior to joining PLDT, she held various positions in the San Miguel Group of companies, where she started her professional career. Ma'am?
All right, good morning and thanks to Business World for the opportunity to join this esteemed panel. PLDT's journey in sustainability started many years back, first documented in a standalone sustainability report covering 2015 ahead of the SEC requirement. Our journey continues today, and I'm here to share some of the learnings as well as a glimpse of what we're doing in the areas of ESG. Everything starts with one's purpose, and for PLDT and Smart, that's connecting and empowering Filipinos everywhere. Our approach is to leverage the use of technology and connectivity to support our sustainability initiatives. A key success factor for sustainability efforts within a company is that it should be high in the CEO agenda. PLDT's focus on sustainability began under our chairman, Manny Pangilinan, and I'm happy to share that our new CEO, Al Panlilio, is taking sustainability a notch higher. His direction is to ensure that sustainability is incorporated in the strategies for our 3 areas of focus, namely customer experience, digitalization, and cost efficiencies. With many options out there, how do we choose? For us, there are 3 guiding principles. The project should be scalable, so less of the one-offs and more of those that we can grow. The project should be sustainable, meaning less reliance on continuous funding and handouts. And most importantly, it should be tightly linked to the business. Now for a few examples of our initiatives under the environmental pillar, these ones in particular using new technologies to reduce our carbon footprint. We deployed the first urban rooftop carbon fiber tower in the Philippines in May. The manufacturing process of carbon fiber towers emits up to 70% less carbon dioxide compared with producing steel. We're deploying green towers which use fuel cell technology that emits less carbon dioxide. In addition, fuel cell towers are cost-effective and operate with minimal downtime, supporting our focus on CX and cost efficiencies. We're also embarking on our Green Fleet program, where we will include electric vehicles as part of our refleeting strategy. We're fortunate to have with us the broader MVP group, the Meralco organization, including MServe, who we can work with on our sustainability initiatives. There's a lot of focus on the E of ESG, but we'd like to highlight what we're doing under the S or social pillar, which is relevant given our purpose and our business of connectivity. While connectivity opens a whole new world for users, including access to information, education, livelihood opportunities, and entertainment, there are attendant dangers that we have a responsibility to address. In line with this, we have robust and extensive cybersecurity and data privacy solutions in place as we commit to providing a safe online environment for our customers. We are active in the fight to protect children against online sexual abuse and explicit content, or OSAEC. PLDT and Smart are the first in the Philippines to join the UK-based Internet Watch Foundation, a global coalition of more than 150 organizations. Since we joined this year, we've blocked 10,000 links to child abuse material. We're working towards inclusion, whether it be providing a safe workplace that embraces diversity or financial inclusion through PayMaya, addressing the needs of the unbanked, underbanked, and unhappily banked. Not to be left out are marginalized communities. We have a school in a bag program, portable digital classrooms for remote communities so no learner is left behind. Smart has a digital farmers program teaching small-scale farmers the use of digital tools to expand markets for their produce. Under the governance pillar, some of the metrics we monitor are diversity of our board in terms of gender, nationality, background, and tenure. Lastly, I just wanted to highlight two interesting projects that leverage the use of connectivity to protect biodiversity. In partnership with Ericsson, we have the Connected Mangroves project where we use an Internet of Things solution and wireless connectivity to capture data relevant to the survival of mangroves such as water level, humidity, soil moisture, and temperature. Data is transmitted over a cloud system to a dashboard accessible to concerned shareholders, as well as the local authorities and communities in the area. In partnership with Huawei, the DENR, and a US-based NGO, RFCX, we have a Rainforest Connection project in Palawan. This taps mobile technology to detect and record rainforest sounds that can help prevent illegal logging and poaching activities in the rainforest. For these two projects, data is transmitted using the SMART network. There are many more, but let me conclude with 2 points. Sustainability is a journey, a continuing work in progress, which should be tightly linked to the business. Also, it's not competition. Rather, it's about each of us doing our part to achieve a common objective as stewards of this planet for the next generation. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, ma'am. So we have one final speaker. Timothy M. Daniels leads investor relations for SM Investments Corporation, the largest company in the Philippines, with businesses in retailing, banking, and property, and investments in high-growth ventures that capture the potential of the emerging Philippine economy. He also oversees the SM Group sustainability function with sustainability reporting of 8 listed companies, building group sustainability capabilities, and helping drive key ESG initiatives. Mr. Timothy M. Daniels.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity and good morning. Can I just confirm that you can see my slide before I go any further?
Yes, you see it now.
Okay, very good. Let me just start out by talking about what the vision of SM Investments is as part of our vision and mission. Because when we think about sustainability, there's been an awful lot of frameworks, there's been an awful lot of new ways of talking and measuring what we do in recent years that we are all trying to follow and be as good as we can. But for us, the journey on sustainability really began 5 or 6 decades ago with the way the group has grown and how we think about our responsibilities. And that's very much captured by the vision that we have as we articulate it today. So, the vision of SM Investments is we're here to build an ecosystem of sustainable businesses. And those businesses are catalysts for responsible development in the communities that we serve. And there's some deliberate words in there because an ecosystem, not just the physical ecosystem of the Philippines, but for us, we're an ecosystem of many stakeholders. And when we think about sustainability, those are forefront because without them, our business doesn't survive and doesn't thrive. And so our responsibilities are very much tied up with our own long-term future. So, we are very cognizant of being an ecosystem of many diverse stakeholders, 130,000 plus employees directly, probably millions employed indirectly, over 80,000 MSMEs who touch the group, of course, millions of customers, and a footprint here in the Philippines that is nationwide and is affected by what happens to the whole country. So with this mindset about being responsible to our stakeholders, we also ask ourselves one question a lot, which is, how as a group do we create value? And how do we share that value so everybody wins? If everybody wins, that is in our long-term success, and we plan to be here for a very long time. So that's our starting point for how we think about sustainability. And with that mindset, under the COVID experience of the last 18 months, it made decision-making about what to do very easy and quick, because it starts with our stakeholders. We kind of bucket the things that we've been doing and continue to do into three areas. One is around safety. We're really focused on ensuring that all of our employees, all the people who visit our malls, who visit our properties, all of our suppliers have the safest and most hygienic, protected environment we can. And you'll see it visibly when you're in our malls with the sanitation and the social distancing and all the protocols that we've put in place. Along with that, we also are vaccinating all of our employees, and we are offering free vaccines for nationwide use for larger communities. And all of our facilities, like our nationwide malls, are offered up as vaccination centers. Innovation is the second thing we realized our stakeholders needed, particularly our customers, because under COVID, convenience was lacking for them, and they have big needs in order to adjust how they get their services and goods from the SM Group. So we've really focused a lot on, as you can see there in the slide, call to deliver options to make shopping convenient and using social media in ways that Filipinos are very familiar and comfortable with. That, combined with the physical presence of our stores and our malls, has led to about 10% of our non-grocery sales in retail coming through new channels, call to deliver, online, app-based channels that people didn't need but have blossomed in the last 18 months. Similarly, and it was mentioned by BDO, BDO is now number 2 on Instapay because customers need convenience in making transactions, and that's why BDO has focused on those channels and the Cash Agad program. Thirdly, resilience. We have communities nationwide that need help. We have tens of thousands of MSMEs who need our support, and it's very much a priority for us to do those things. So we've offered marketing support, we've offered financial support to our tenants, to our retail suppliers. We've made huge donations to communities. In fact, our total support to communities, the support we're giving to our employees, our third parties, the over 90,000 PPEs and safety gear that we've donated, the 11 billion in donations and employee support, 6 quarantine facilities, 85,000 packs of goods that have gone out to support vulnerable communities. In total, SM as a group has spent over 30 billion pesos by the time we got to the end of last year, and that number keeps growing. So all of these decisions were made very quickly. It really took the senior leadership of the different SM companies less than an afternoon to identify what we needed to do, because our mindset of sustainability was already very, very much focused on looking after all of our stakeholders. We just needed to work out the practicalities, but there was no question, because it's the way we think about how we operate. Now, there are 4 more criteria and mechanisms behind sustainability that we have adopted over the years. And our own report for 2020 on the right-hand side there incorporates all the things that we've built in the last 7 or 8 years into our new integrated report. And I would just highlight, some steps on the journey and partners that have been important to us. First of all, GRI. We get a lot of help from GRI, particularly in our early days, and we have strong relations, and we're a very strong supporter of them, hosting conferences with them online and here in the Philippines. And what they do is they provide us with a framework for reporting and the kind of indicators that we know third parties want to look at to track our performance, and which we find useful because it enables us to hold ourselves accountable. Secondly, we signed up to the Global Compact of the United Nations and to support the Sustainability Development Goals. That gives us focus. That made us think about what are the material areas across our group where we have an impact that we need to make sure is sustainable, and where we can have an impact on what we need to do for the good of the planet. Just this year, we adopted integrated reporting. So we no longer have separate financial and sustainability reports. We have one report, which I would encourage people to go and have a look at from our website. It's very easily available. And integrated reporting allowed us to take into practice that question of what value do we create and how do we share it among all of our stakeholder groups. Integrated reporting has given us a very holistic way to tell our story in a way that is understandable not just by sustainability technicians, but by our employees, our customers, and the general public. We're on a journey, and looking forward, there are things still to do. TCFD has been mentioned, and there are also accounting standards coming. And the word science-based is very important. So is risk assessment. And we know that the Philippines, of course, is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. And so for us, our journey continues along these technical routes, which works hand in hand and supports what we do as a mindset. I mentioned the Sustainability Development Goals, and I just want to highlight that we have 6 that we think of as our priorities. Of course, given our scale, decent work and economic growth is where we have a big impact. And the same with sustainable cities and communities. In fact, SM Prime, our property company, uses 10% of its capex to ensure that all of its developments are sustainable and can handle disaster relief and resilience. Disaster resilience is an area we lead in. Not only do we look at being efficient on climate action in our businesses, but through BDO, we've also supported 50 renewable energy projects nationwide. Our foundations support good health and well-being and quality education, with building over 270 schools, over 270 health centers. We have helped over 28 million people with literary programs, and we have over 10,000 scholars today. And our partnership for the goals is something that we really started to take as a responsibility given our leading presence in the Philippines. We are an advocate wherever we can be. We've worked with the UN and we've worked with GRI on local conferences, and we're always trying to get active in influencing our peers and policy within the Philippines to support the SDG goals. And with those advocacies, I would just highlight a couple of things that we've done recently. We are, of course, we have been for a while a member of FTSE for Good, for example, and good governance programs that are not just Filipino, but regional. We're also a member of the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index. We have very superior scores in how we empower and promote and look after the women within our organization. And we're recognized as part of the global index for that. Forbes magazine overall rates us number 172 best regarded company in the world. And that's not just based on our size, it's based on our activities. But in the last 12 months, there are a couple of other things that we're proud to have been involved in. One is we joined an organization globally called 50 Sustainability and Climate Leaders, and we are the only Filipino company there. I would encourage you again to go to the website or to the link that you can see. There is a short 7-minute video which highlights the program and all the things that SM is doing to try and be an advocate and a partner in tackling climate change and sustainability. We very much believe the private sector should work hand in hand with government and regulators, and that this is a race that we can win. We're also proud that Sustainalytics this year noted that we are an industry leader. So among our peer group of holding companies and financial investors globally, we are rated at the top of the list within the top 5. And that is something that we are proud to have achieved. So, just to finish, I would just want to make one point again, which is sustainability is not a new thing. It's about how we do our business. And SM is here because we've been thinking this way for 60 years. And we hope to be here 100 years from now by carrying on thinking this way and looking after all of our stakeholders so that we all have a future. It's the way we think, it's the way we do our actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So we will be moving on to our panel discussion to continue sharing insights on the ESG criteria. So for our viewers, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments and we will be asking our speakers later on. So I want to start with how ESG criteria has been um, has attracted more interest in the past few years, and maybe even more so during the pandemic. So I want to ask about what drives your companies to embrace the goals laid out by the ESG criteria. Have you been setting these targets or similar targets long before it became a trend? Maybe we can start with Mr. Daniel, since you said that the company has been following similar criteria for the past 60 years.
As I said, sustainability is something we've been thinking of for a long time, but we didn't think of it necessarily using the terms that we're all using today, and we didn't, realize how important it was to communicate or to use these frameworks until I would say the last 6 or 7 years. But for us, we started seeing a lot of attention from investors globally, asking us to talk about it and be more transparent. And once we'd started on that journey, we realized that actually sustainability fit very well with what we were already doing, and we needed to step up in a number of areas. So it's created a very good, virtuous circle for us of feedback, where we're now regularly engaged with third parties and rating agencies and the investment community, for example, about what we're doing. And for us, it's had a very positive effect. I would say the majority of our investors these days are interested in us because sustainability just shows we're a good company and they understand us better. When we started reporting, let's say 7 years ago, we traded at a slight premium to the Philippine market. Over the period that we have been reporting and people have been understanding us better, that multiple has widened. The multiple has widened faster than our earnings have grown, and it's because people recognize the quality of company that we are. So for us, the journey is one that has it's influenced by what all of the stakeholders tell us, and we take that feedback on board. As it goes on, we start to look at more and more technical ways to engage, and that is what we will continue to do. But for us, it's a very positive journey.
All right, thank you. Ms. Crisanta, would you say that your company has a similar experience?
I would say that like everybody, sustainability is a journey, but we've journeyed early on, I suppose. If you take a look at our business, telco as a business, right? From the very beginning, our sustainability practice is emanating from our values as a company. We are an Ayala company, and a Singtel company, and of course from our purpose. Since the advent of mobile telephony, Philippines is a very unique case because Philippines is predominantly prepaid, right? So from the very beginning, we're already democratizing mobile services, allowing a lot of our countrymen and enabling them with these kinds of services, making it really affordable for them. So apart from that, we also introduce internet, right? So mobile internet through your smartphones. Again, it's our way of reaching out and being able to do internet for all. Internet for all is an ambition of every country, right? It's really stemming from where we are as a business. And if you take a look at Globe, for instance, with the customer base that we have at about 86 million, we do have the scale. And that is really, really important because the things that we do when we take care of our stakeholders at the scale that we operate in really produces a lot of impact, right? And from a sustainability standpoint, this is really the metric. What is your positive impact to your customers, to your stakeholders, to your partners, right? And as a purpose-led company like ourselves, and our purpose is in everything that we do, we treat people right to do a globe of good. Treating people right is about being customer-centric. Treating people right talks about how we do business, responsible business with our partners. and our stakeholders. Globe of good is really about our strength, right? As a business, our strength in using technology, our strength in being able to do innovations at scale, right? And how we're able to impact the lives of farmers, fishermen, sari-sari store owners, the vendors, the one that you see on Viber, for instance, right? How they pivoted, right? So those are the things that we do. And the criteria that you're looking for in terms of ESG, these are frameworks, right? They're frameworks. And the framework from GRI to Sustainalytics to integrated reporting, the IIRC, is part of the journey of a company. In the beginning, everybody was doing GRI until it wasn't enough anymore. Then we took a look at Sustainalytics, and again, it wasn't enough anymore. So now we're doing integrated reporting, the IIRC framework, because we believe that true practice really has to emanate from the strengths of the company, what we really, really stand for, right? And how we care for our stakeholders, most especially our employees and our customers.
So I want to ask more about that. So you said that so from the beginning you've had these sustainability related goals and that has changed as criteria or different criteria changes. So how do you modify your targets and what remains the same as you encounter more and more different types of criteria for ESG? Would anyone like to share? Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Denina.
Yes, Mr. Lozano.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the key things is it's made us focus on materiality, right? Because one of the challenges with sustainability is it can have many characteristics. You can do many things. So I think the more what made us focus a lot more is doing our materiality assessment, not just at the AEV level, but across all of our different business units. So where we see, where we have an impact on our stakeholders, what our stakeholders are looking for from us, and then we can focus our resources on those particular areas, right? And which of the ESGs, which of the SDGs are most important to them. So I think that's where it's made a bit of a change. As a result as well, it's also allowed us to put this into our KPIs. So now we've drilled down our KPIs, not just at a group level, but at our strategic business units like food, power, banking, and even down to the business units. So it's provided us the focus. A lot of people have mentioned frameworks. The framework has helped us really put our energies in the right places. The materiality has helped us identify these areas, and as a result, we've I guess more laser focused on which criteria is important to us and our stakeholders, and where we will put our resources.
I want to ask Ms. Alvarez the same question. Would you say that your company had the same experience, and how have you changed or modified your strategies and when it comes to following ESG criteria when there are several frameworks right now?
So in our case at BDO, how we approach this is in terms of framing it within a specific context. And that means looking at it from the context of within the country, within our industry as part of the financial sector, and within our size as a bank, because it will be different. It's not the same one size fits all for all banks, much more for all companies. It will all have different E and S criteria applied to depending on what we do and how we impact our stakeholders. And I completely agree with what Mr. Lozano said, that it also depends on the materiality that is specific to you as a bank or as a business, because that will determine what your priorities are, what your focus are, and what impact you can make from the environmental and the social aspect. That's how we have framed our sustainability frameworks and our philosophy. It all stems from that.
All right, thank you. So we have representatives here from various industries with different types of stakeholders. But I'm curious about what you've seen in terms of have your investors or stakeholders that are choosing to invest in your companies, um, like in what ways do you think that that your ESG criteria, sorry, let me rephrase this. So have your investors and your stakeholders choosing to invest in your companies because of the ESG criteria you meet or are planning to meet? So in what ways do you see these ESG materializing into significant gains for them?
If I can take that
Yes,
question.
yes, please.
If you asked us maybe a year ago, you would have a few meetings where you have investors ask about ESG, mainly those from Europe and a little bit from the States. But of late, what we've seen, as the year passed, you've seen a lot of fund managers ask more about sustainability and what you're doing in the areas of ESG. And to varying degrees, we've met with investors who send us, 3-page small font questionnaire drilling down on several criteria. So I guess it's becoming important now for fund managers more and more to make sure that the companies that they're investing in will, I guess, will carry on many years from now. And there are certain areas that they are careful about. They want to make sure that you're not using child labor, that there are no penalties related to your operating the business. So it's becoming more and more important today. And we're effectively what it also does is there's a pool of fund managers out there who are looking for companies who have good sustainability practices. So when we pursue our sustainability initiatives, we also open the company up for investment by a new pool of investors that will look at companies that are effectively operating very sustainably.
I would actually echo that because we also experience the same thing at the bank. We have more investors doing their due diligence more often and also sending us those long questions around various aspects of ESG. And it's not just environmental anymore, there's also a very strong focus on social, like diversity and inclusion, gender equality. What are we doing in terms of that? In terms of how we are addressing anti corruption. For example, do we have an anti corruption policy and human rights? And so it's good that there is strong focus now in both environmental and social aspects, and particularly around social inequality, addressing that and making sure that it's one of the areas that the bank will continue to focus on because it's becoming also more important to all our investors in various regions of the world.
Right. And I want to ask the same question to Mr. Daniels. Have you seen stakeholders show more interest in issues surrounding the environment or labor when it comes to your company?
Those are some of the questions that are part of the broad mix, to be honest. Because we're a large group, we really touch on all of.
All right. I think he disconnected for a little bit. Would anyone like to add to what has been recently said?
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah, if you don't mind. I don't know if it's because we're our company, but we've been having these questions for maybe the last 5, 6 years. And what the difference I'm seeing now is substance. Before it was, are you going to be green? Are you doing this? And they were happy with statements and they were happy with headlines. What I'm seeing more now is people are looking for more substance. What are you really doing? Do you have a framework and a structure within your organization to ensure that ESG is top of mind? Is your board, is your CEO on board with these things? And real projects, real plans, right? So I think investors are already shifting from just hoping that you are green and that you are sustainable to actually expecting you to provide substance. And this is where the ratings come in. And this is where the reporting comes in as well. That's why, for me, that's the most valuable development over the last couple of years. Is by having the right framework that people can understand, and having also the reports like the TCFD and the CDO and others, people will see if what you're doing is has substance behind it and is not just a headline. So that's
Right.
probably the biggest change I've seen.
Can
Right, so
I
they
can I
use-
add can I add a
Please
little
go
bit
ahead.
more? I guess there's a lot of expectations right now coming from on all fronts, whether it's the stakeholders or the investor community, right? And that's the reason why you have all of these ESG ratings and indices already. So even ESG is being treated like a financial index, right? Because you have all of these rating agencies um, looking at the disclosures that we are doing. So you see, the expectation is really coming out of what kind of disclosures are we putting out there for public, and more importantly, there's also regulatory pressures, right? So in the Philippines, the SEC has actually mandated all publicly listed companies to start doing ESG reporting, right? So we have to comply as a publicly listed company. But more than that, obviously you're not going to be happy with this, right? So every year you want to be able to improve, you want to be able to scale up, you want to be able to reach the highest peak in terms of your rating. And it's good because rating is coming from not internal but external, right? So there's a lot of measures that goes along with those rating, including governance, especially governance, like the board composition, if sustainability is part of the board mandate, some things like that, right?
Right,
If
so
I may
people,
add to
please
that,
go.
in the case of BDO and banks, apart from the SEC regulations, we also address the BSP, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas regulations, which mandates that all banks should transition into a sustainable finance framework within a period of 3 years, which starts in 2020 and technically ends May of 2023. And what that means is really embedding or incorporating the ESG criteria in every bank's governance, risk management, strategic objectives, and operations. And the BSP itself is going through that as an example. But as you can imagine, it's different for BDO and it would be different for the other banks, smaller banks, in terms of how we approach this. But certainly that is also driving our initiatives and our focus. And we are approaching it from how we are placed within the industry.
So I think Mr. Daniels, you were cut off earlier.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a connectivity issue, but I wanted to just pick up on this engagement with investors because, they're on a journey as well, right? So we do have more expectations from regulators and scorecards and rating agencies. We have SEC requirements to file. I know central banks putting policies in place. And if we look at other markets like Singapore, for example, TCFD is something that is going to be an expectation or a regulatory requirement pretty soon for everyone. And that's without talking about accounting changes that we see coming. So we do see a lot of formal requirements being put in place. And investors are learning as well because, last year under COVID, all of these ESG indices and sustainable companies basically outperformed hugely. And that got everyone's interest. So it's well past the tipping point of being a nice to have, an extra gold star if you're a sustainable company. It's now something investors expect, and you will fall behind if you don't have it. But I think it's important as we have these conversations and as it becomes a more formalized, sustainability criteria world, it's important that we don't lose track of, what companies are really trying to do if you're doing it properly. And there are limitations on what the numbers can tell you. I know that I quite often sit down with investors who are very keen on sustainability, and they tell me, we don't think that the scorecards, the third parties have got it right on what they are saying. Could you explain to us? And it's unlike doing credit rating, where it's quite, a fairly simple set of criteria, financial things you measure, and all the rating agencies will look at it the same way. With ESG, there is a lot of metrics. They can be looked at a lot of different ways, and everyone's got their own framework. And when you put all the data through an engine to analyze it, you lose the story sometimes. So I think it's really important for us who are, communicators from sustainability world, from investor relations perspectives, to just bear in mind that actually we have to engage the investors on what are the priorities in the Philippines. Where can our companies make a difference? How do we think about it? Because that's actually, in the end, a lot more convincing and real to the goals that they're trying to achieve than simply taking the scores that come out of, many of these metrics that are out there. And I do see a world coming where more and more accounting pressure is coming for us to be 2 decimal accuracy on 1,000 different metrics. I just hope we don't lose the ability to keep the story in the conversations that we have.
All right.
Yeah, like in accounting, when your report is 10,000 pages and no one can read it anymore, right? So hopefully the ESG reporting and sustainability reporting doesn't reach that kind of a level.
Yeah, and I may add, I guess, I would like to add to what Tim said in the score with respect to the scoring. For example, when you there's a certain score that the PLDT got, and when you benchmark against other telcos, for example, you kind of engage with the ratings agency to see why your score is so much, only to realize that the fact that we're in the Philippines, it actually docks a certain number of points because we're in what is considered a disaster-prone area. But absent of that, assuming that we were kind of on the same level, the initiatives that we are undertaking are kind of similar to what somebody in a telco in Europe is doing. So I agree with Tim. When there is a score, we should try to engage the users of that score for them to better understand what the score is all about. I think the score starts a conversation, but there's for it to be properly appreciated, we need to be able to engage with our stakeholders as to what that score actually means. But I guess it's a way of starting a conversation, looking at everybody from different industries, different countries, but it's a starting point to be able to appreciate that engagement is needed.
And that's also where sustainability reporting really comes in, because sometimes the score is also influenced by how much disclosure you have in your publicly available reports. So if it's not in your AR, if it's not in your sustainability report, then it's not really something that the indices or investors consider as part of what they can rate. So there has to be accountability and transparency, which is part of what we have been advocating as good governance.
And I want to ask Mr. Lozano's thoughts on that as well. Like, how do you communicate well to your stakeholders and to the public what you've been achieving in terms of these criteria?
Well, to be honest, it's an evolving process, right? Before, it was as simple as we started doing our GRI reports in 2010. And people were already surprised that there was that kind of reporting. And as someone mentioned earlier, GRI is already almost old news, and we need to do a lot more. So, and me, it all started with the materiality assessment, because the question really is, what do your stakeholders, whether they're investors, banks, insurers, local governments, partners, what are they interested in specifically about you and your business? So I think it has to begin with the materiality assessment. What are those key areas that are related to you? Because a bank will have a different materiality than a food company, then a telco, then a power company. So it helps to really get that third-party view of what's important to your stakeholders, where you have the most impact, and then focusing your reporting on that. But how you report it, how you discuss it, I mean, everybody here is or most people here are IR practitioners. There's many ways, right? You just have to find how to reach out, identify who your key stakeholders are, and try to reach out, have the best the best website, the best reports, integrated reports, and make it as easy as possible for them to really understand what your goals are. I think that's the key, right? What is it? What's the most material aspect of what you're doing, and how to make it easy for them to understand, so they don't have to read all of the different reports. And hopefully, you know who these key stakeholders are, and you meet with them as regularly as possible. Just keep being consistent, meeting with them, talking to them, even by Zoom. In the old days, we used to do road shows. Now it's probably mostly and maybe easier via Zoom. So I would say just keep being consistent in reaching out and trying to understand their needs.
Right. I want to ask about how you guys think these criteria can be improved further. Because if you look at the criticism surrounding ESG, there's been some criticism about how it's inconsistent, because there's just so many ways you could frame it. Or some criticism also talk about how it's based on disclosures. And it's not necessarily externally confirmed or audited. So how do you think this criteria can be further improved so that companies can actually be held accountable? Anyone like to share? Ms. Alvarez?
There is actually a global move towards standardizing the criterias. And GRI, SASB, they're all moving towards that, looking at commonalities. But the reality is, again, going back to context, there are different contexts for different countries, different industries. And any one standard has to take that into consideration. So that's really what makes it a bit difficult to standardize. Um, some of us use different standards just to be able to really show how wide the scope of our impact has been, and that's okay. As I said, it's not one size fits all. You have to find which standards are really appropriate for you and what works for you, so that you can really show how you create value.
Can I pitch in?
Yes, please.
Actually, prior to this forum, I just had a conversation with Yale University, and that's exactly the same question, right? Because they're looking at how do you improve the criteria, and we're talking at one sector, just MNOs, mobile network operators. And so I think what's happening right now, and is that there are a lot of different frameworks there, because it's evolving. I think it's natural because sustainability practice is still evolving across the board, right? So you get into SASB, a lot of these acronyms, DCFD, science-based targets, etc. So it's really, I think for us, it's really about how do you simplify things, because things are getting a little bit more complicated. At the end of the day, when you're looking at sustainability, the North Star is really UN global principles. If you're adhering to the 10 principles and the 17 SDGs, and how you're contributing to the 17 SDGs, right? Regardless of whether you choose just 5 of the 17, or in our case, 10 of the 17. It's really about the impact, right? So the question is, how do you measure impact? So here's a use case. Like in the Philippines, there are about 109 million Filipinos, and a telco company like Globe is servicing something like 86 million Filipinos. But when you go to Australia, how many people are there? They're just like something like 10 million. So does that mean that we're gonna be working harder than the people in Australia because we have more customers that we need to impact? We have more stakeholders that we need to impact. So those are questions, right? And if you look at the global telco space, for instance, the whole sector, there's not even a singular metric governing the sector, much more less in banks, for instance. and there's a lot more in other companies like manufacturing industries, right? So I guess to answer your question, how do we improve this criteria? I guess we need a little bit more simplified criteria because we don't want barriers. We don't want barriers in sustainability practice. When reporting becomes too complicated, how does it incentivize even small companies to practice sustainability? And in sustainability, you want everybody to be a participant, right? So those things like simplification and standardization.
Would anyone like to
I,
add to that? Yes.
I completely agree with the points of the last couple of speakers. And I do see this wave coming, right? You see it with TCFD and SASB, where the demand for stronger sustainability practices and reporting is turning into quite an industry of measurement and frameworks and metrics. And we have to do it. We don't really have a choice. But again, we shouldn't lose the focus on what are the material things that your company can do, that it needs to do to be responsible. And among that, I think, we all have to think about what are we saying to our customers? What are we saying to, in our case, our tenants and our supply chain? Because we're trying to make a difference in all these sustainability areas, and we can influence it. So for us, we also think about how do we work with our tenants and our malls to think about what products they offer? How do we think about working with our retail suppliers to come up with choices that consumers would want to make that are more sustainable choices, whether it's packaging, whether it's type of product, whether it's how far it's shipped, whether it's just new products that meet, new sustainability needs. And we can influence it through, our ecosystem of businesses. And we also want to communicate it to our employees. And none of that is captured by having more detailed accounting frameworks. And frankly, for us, we're seeing this as a priority to think about as well. So when we've just done our first integrated report, we've probably got more detail on the numbers, but it's gone down to less than a dozen pages out of 150 is actually hard numbers reporting on criteria. And we're trying to spend more time talking to the audiences who, along with us, are the ones who can change their behaviors and make sustainable choices. So, again, I don't want us to get caught up in the accounting that is coming down the line. I think we need to keep focused on what is the sustainability impact that we can have.
Right. So throughout the discussion today, we've been talking about how we make sure that there should be an impact on the Philippine community. So I want to ask about what it means to meet the ESG criteria in the Philippine context. So how will Filipino businesses integrate this ESG differently from how other countries do it?
Well, I don't think it will be different, right? I don't think it will be different, but I think what you need to do as a Philippine company is make sure that you localize also these issues, right? I mean, for example, we're not a developed country. So I don't think that we necessarily have to follow standards that are set by countries that have already stopped growing and are no longer in need of economic growth, right? So if there's any difference, it's the frameworks, etc., should be the same, I assume. It's more, what are you putting into it? What information are you putting into it? Because we need to know that. We need to know that we're different than a Swedish company, right? Or a Norwegian company. They've already grown. They've already used oil and all of these things, and now they want to change, right? But the Philippines, we're growing 6-8%. We need more infrastructure. We need more telco. We need more power. We have to be able to address that issue. Because one of the biggest issues we have in the Philippines, inequality, or not just in the Philippines, right? So how do we address that while using somebody else's values? So I think it boils down to what is the value of your company, or what are the values you live by as a company, as I think it was like what Tim was mentioning, and make sure that drives your activity. The reports, etc., we all have to follow it. But what we want, the message we want to give, the simple message we want to give is driven by our values. And that should be, for me, how if we're going to be different, it's that. We make sure that our values are there, right? And that comes out in our reports, and we don't just follow blindly the report and not give the proper message to all of our stakeholders.
I think for
Uh,
us, if I may,
my-
I think you need to take into consideration also the local environment. So some of the things that are unique to the Philippines or present in the Philippines, for example, are mangroves. We have rainforests. We have marginalized communities. These are not present in countries that have gone ahead in ESG. For example, in Norway or Sweden, but in the Philippines, there are such areas that we need to protect, environments that are unique to the Philippines, and activities that are also maybe present in the Philippines, like illegal logging, that we can address, in our case, using technology to use bioacoustics to protect our rainforests and the like. There are peatlands that are carbon sinks that we can protect as well. So that, I think, is something unique to the Philippines, not present in other countries, that we need to take into consideration when we do our ESG initiatives.
So that's always the challenge because the European countries have set the way, they have most of the best practices. But the one thing we always think about in the Philippine context is geographically we are in a very disaster prone area, which impacts everything else that has to do with the environment and social impact to the people. So that's one. The other one is in terms of social inequality, as mentioned by the other speakers, um, you have to look at how different it is in terms of social inequality in other countries. Then there are also the sources of energy. In Europe, they don't really have a lot of solar power sources, but that's what we have in abundance in the Philippines, as you can feel last summer in the past months. So these are things that we can leverage. So they can both be strengths, they can be challenges. But the thing is to look at how we can innovate solutions so that we can address and mitigate. So one other thing, that sometimes is thought about in terms of sustainability in the Philippines is it's expensive. You have to put so many resources into it. But the answer to that is also technological innovations. You have to put the best scientific minds to find solutions and for businesses to be able to leverage this into opportunities to offer better products, better services that would help economic development and also address social inequality in the country.
I guess holistically, when you take a look at the Philippines as against even Asia Pacific region, right? You also need to take a look at levels of adoption, which is also different. So there's difference in culture, there's difference in geography, specific things that are unique in this country, but also enablement, right? Um, again, sustainability requires the whole of country. So it's not just corporates, it's not just the private sector. There has to be a very strong partnership with public sector, right? So government can also include enabling laws, some more incentives in terms of more sustainability linked businesses. Like how do you encourage, example, electric cars in the country, manufacturing, and all of that, right? There's a lot of sustainability linked businesses that are sprouting everywhere, especially in areas like in the more advanced countries. And that's something that we can think about. That's already, it's already there. They've shown that it's already viable, right? So that's something that we can also take a look at. So I guess it requires also a lot of public sector engagement in the practice, not just to tell us, okay, you make good reports or ESG reports. No, but in terms of investments, where do we want to put our investments that will really make a difference for the country? Right?
All right, so we have a question from the audience. June Lau said, have you integrated carbon footprint reduction to your ESG program? You would like to share
Yes,
anything about
the
carbon
answer
footprint?
is yes.
Yes.
The answer is very much yes. Like I mentioned for Globe, we are part of the net zero initiative already, right? So we use science-based targets for us to be able to reach zero carbon emission by 2050, right? So yes, the answer is definitely yes.
All right. Okay, so I'll ask one final question, and maybe we can integrate this as well into the closing remarks, if that's all right with you guys. So, what can you advise the business community regarding ESG? And for those who are starting to do this, how can they start working on targets that meet the ESG criteria? So, yeah, for our closing remarks, let's start with Mr. Daniel.
Thank you. Well, for companies that are starting on this journey, I think one of the key things that's been said today is materiality. Even the frameworks that are in place aren't asking you to do everything perfectly from the start. We've been doing it for 7 years now, and we're still tightening up and finding new things to report on and ways to report it. So start out by really assessing what's material to your business, where you can have the most impact and want to have the most impact. And that will guide you as to what your story is and what your policy and investment directions should be. And ultimately, that's probably more important than the actual reporting, because it will make sure that you're the kind of company that investors and stakeholders want you to be. And then, you can reach out, you can talk to GRI, you can talk to many providers out there to help you, refine the formal criteria and processes you're using. But start out with your thinking and your materiality. And, if I was to wrap that up into a closing statement, I would say sustainability is not about frameworks. Sustainability is not about metrics or organizations that will police you. Sustainability is, for us anyway, it's for thinking, what do I have to do to be here in 100 years' time? And because we're an ecosystem of businesses, answering that question means I need to think about how to help all of my stakeholder groups and the physical environment that we're in. How do we deal with what's going to happen to that? So thinking sustainability actually leads you to make different operational and business choices, and it leads your investments into the right areas. If you're thinking sustainability, you'll build buildings different, you'll operate your businesses differently. You will reach out and make sure that your stakeholder groups are supported. You will start to think about, well, what's climate change going to do to the footprint of my businesses and how I operate my logistics chains? And when you have something like the pandemic come along, it will make what you need to do really obvious, because you have already thought about the future, how you handle the risks, and what's really material to your business. So, for me, that's really where the importance of sustainability comes in. And if we're to be successful in the things we want to do for this planet, we need an A grade on that. That's more important than an A grade on your accounting homework.
All right, thank you. Ms. Verheldeja.
Yeah, I guess where does the journey for sustainability start? That starts from each organization determining what their purpose is and accepting the responsibility that they are stewards for the next generation. Once you take that into account and there's an acceptance organization-wide, it cannot just be one office, it cannot just be the CEO, it has to be up and down the board, down to the last man in the organization, embracing the concept of sustainability and the responsibility for the next generation. Let's not be daunted by all of the frameworks. That's just a tool that you can use down the line. What's important is you determine what you need to do to continue to keep the business going under the environmental, social, and governance pillars. And the journey starts with the first step, right? The journey never ends. It's something that continues. And one way to go on the journey is to look, as I said earlier, it's not a competition, but it's good to benchmark and look at what other people are doing, check best practices, benchmark what you're doing, ask and consult, and people who are sustainability practitioners are happy to share their journey and learn from everybody else. So don't get daunted by everything that you see in terms of frameworks. That's just a measure that tries to level everything off. But what's important is you start the journey, you determine what's important to keep your business going, and you just stay at the course and stay at it and continue on the journey.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Crisanto?
Yeah, well, sustainability is actually the new way of doing business, right? Sustainability is your infinite game, if I may say so. This is like over the 100 years and more, right? So at the end of the day, you really need to take a look at how you're taking care of your stakeholders, how you're doing business that's not going to be harmful to your environment, and how you're going to take care of the planet. You know, it's been often said, right? There is no planet B. Okay, so this is really for us and our future and the future generation. So, but we also need to take care of imbibing the thinking that sustainability is not really philanthropy. Sustainability is not CSR. Sustainability is being able to do responsible business, right? That it goes back. It goes back to your business. At the end of the day, if your business is not sustainable, then what's going to happen, right? So don't be ashamed if we say that you're doing all of these programs, you're looking at impact, but at the same time you're investing. um, you have to change a little bit on how you create your program, so that at the end of the day, whatever program that you're doing really goes back to the business and let the business, right? So also, it's been said that in the ambit of COVID-19, this is really a dry run for us, all of us, right? COVID-19 is a dry run because there are far more larger black swan events that we can probably predict. And one of them coming is actually climate change. So this is our way of helping, this is our way of mitigating so many of those risks that we are looking at, so many of those risks that are also impacting our businesses today. And I guess at the end of the day, there's no other way to start but start now for all of us.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So next we have Ms. Alvarez.
Thanks, Janina. So, really, for companies who are starting, we cannot overemphasize the journey part, and sustainability is not really something that should be foreign to you, because we also know it by other names over the years. Ms. Yoli has mentioned CSR, and that's also one of the things, the social component comes from corporate social responsibility, which is driven by corporate reputation, what started that out as philanthropy and later on evolved into something that is more relevant to what the company does. And then corporate governance comes from all the economic financial crisis that globally has been experienced, and mandating the independence of directors in companies, for example, to ensure that there is a balance in terms of decision making. And the environment focus and the impact really comes from um, the United Nations SDGs when it was first launched in 2015. So it's something that has evolved over the years. And so when you look at all of this and you now look at sustainability as something that you need to start in your company, you actually have all these previous experiences before that you just need to leverage on and build on. And to do that, you need to start with data, with demographics, because you cannot do any metrics, you cannot set any targets if you don't have the right data at your fingertips. So start with that, gather that, and then do a gap analysis in terms of how mature your organization is in terms of embedding an environmental and a social criteria. It's a process that we are doing as a bank. It's a process that the central bank is also going through. So definitely one way to be um, on your way on your sustainability journey. And finally, um, as others have already mentioned, it's a matter of collaboration. We all need to work together to be able to help the planet achieve its net zero greenhouse gas emissions target in 2030, 2050. And this is now an existential issue. It's a matter of existence already for all of us and for the future generations that will be, we hope, can still have a planet to live on.
Thank you, ma'am. And finally, we have Mr. Lozano.
Thank you. I think the question is a challenging one, and we could probably spend another couple of hours trying to guide or help people who are starting. But I think it starts with, what are your values, and also the materiality assessment. Right? What do you believe? Where do you believe you provide an impact? Where do your stakeholders feel you have an impact? And then let that drive how you move forward. And maybe on a less technical point of view, I think, and also be willing to dream big. Right? I mean, if you are a small company, it doesn't mean that you won't have an impact on sustainability in your country. So I think you have to dream big, because it's the dreamers that come up with the innovations, the new ways of doing things, the better ways of doing things, that later on become critical in how the country grows. For us in Aboitiz, our impetus is always about advancing business and communities. To be able to provide the needed boost to the economy, we need to be able to generate value for the business and distribute this value across all of our different stakeholders. Sustainability requires a whole of nation approach, and businesses and investors, whether they're small or big, are prime movers in making sustainable transformation happen. The private sector, the businesses, the entrepreneurs are one of the biggest parts of this. We aim to be a part of building a better normal for the country, and we should all be aiming high to do that, to empower the needed innovations, the needed transformations in order to achieve a better way of life for all. So again, just to encapsulate it, if you're a new entrepreneur investor, that has to be your dream. And if that's your dream and you have the right values, the sustainability will follow. And maybe last one is, somebody mentioned it earlier, please ask for help. There's a lot of practitioners. We first started talking, we didn't know much about this. We started talking to everyone, benchmark with our neighbors. You have actually a panel here of experts and probably the best practitioners you can find. So learn a lot from all of the companies that are here today. It will be a big education for all of you.
And on that note, thank you so much, sir, and thank you to all of our speakers for sharing your insights. Thank you to Mr. Daniels, Mr. Vergel de Jos, Ms. Crisanto, Ms. Alvarez, and Mr. Lozano. Much gratitude also to our partners for making this session, Aboitiz Group, Globe, Meralco, PLDT, and Smart. To our partner organizations, British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, the Bank Marketing Association of the Philippines, the Management Association of the Philippines, the Philippine Association of National Advertisers, and the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and to our media partner, the Philippine Star. Be sure to tune in to Business World's social media pages to be updated on our next projects. Again, this is Janina Ibanez, and this has been Business World Insights. Good afternoon, everyone.
Sa pagpatak ng ulan, sa pagsubok na dumaraan, may tapang kang harap, lilipad kang may pangarap. Lilipad kang may pangarap.
Kailan may di mag-iisa, susulong ka ng may kasama, may tapang kang haharap.
Lilipad kang may pangarap. Lilipad kang may pangarap. Simula na ng bukas. Simula na ng bukas. Simula na ng bukas.
Sabay sa pagbabago,
Harapin ang bagong mundo. Simula na ng bukas. Simula na ng bukas ngayon.
Year after year, one thing has remained constant. Our goal to ensure meaningful economic development and uplift the lives of the people we serve. Every time we energize our cities, fulfill the dreams of the many, forge genuine partnerships, connect ideas, design experiences, and solve our toughest challenges. We drive change for a better world. From a small town in the Visayas to our journey to become global, we will remain at the helm. Because our business is your story of firm foundations, purposeful growth, and the future that we share. Aboitiz, 100 years of advancing business and communities.
Napansin mo ba, mas madalas ka nang magsabi ng stay safe kesa bye-bye. At aminin mo, nawili ka sa TikTok, hindi para mapasaya ang sarili, kundi para mapatawang iba. Napansin mo rin ba, na palagi na kayong kumpleto pag nagsisimba? At sino mag-aakala na ang daming maglalabasang internet celebrities ngayon? Ilang pagkain na bang na-order mo? Kahit di ka naman gutom, uhaw ka lang makatulong. At nakailang care emojis ka nang nasend mula ng ECQ. Pansin mo, iba na bigla ang go-to playlist mo. Alam mo rin bang mas maraming naglalabas ng pera ngayon? Kahit taghirap? Alam mo kung bakit? Kasi patuloy mang magbago ang mundo, isang bagay ang mananatili.
Malalampasan din natin to.
Hindi tayo mawawalan ng pag-asa. Kaya patuloy namin pinapanatili pinakamabilis at pinakamalawak ang inyong network so we can all be connected by hope.